All right, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into an ending that literally left audiences devastated. If you've witnessed the finale of the hit anime series Cyberpunk Edgerunners, well, you already know it hits like an absolute freight train. But today, we're breaking down exactly why it hurts so much. We'll be combining passionate fan reactions, the stark reality of late capitalism, and the classic structure of narrative tragedy to figure out what makes this story tick.
So to kick things off, we got to talk about the massive debate raging in the fan community over on Reddit. When those credits finally roll and we see Lucy making it to the moon, audiences immediately started asking a really tough question. Is this a bittersweet ending, or is it just a pure, crushing tragedy?
I mean, just look at this passionate quote from Reddit user AtomBombTV. They hit the nail right on the head, saying, "The ending is a freaking tragedy. The romance is bittersweet." And you know, they're completely right. The romance gave us this glimmer of hope, but the overarching narrative, it absolutely crushed it. Let's map out our journey today to understand exactly why that is.
Here is our agenda for today. First, we'll weigh the bittersweet versus pure tragedy debate. Then we'll look at the concept of late capitalism in Night City, zero in on the tragic hero's flaw, break down Smasher in the final stand, and wrap up with that Pyrrhic lunar epilogue.
Okay, part one. Bittersweet or pure tragedy? Let's analyze the fan debate. When you really dig into the discussion, you see two very distinct camps. On the sweet side, some fans point out that David technically achieved his dream, right? He became a Night City legend, and more importantly, he ensured Lucy survived and escaped her life of constantly looking over her shoulder for Arasaka agents. In a dystopian nightmare, just getting out alive is a huge win. But then, you have the bitter side. Fans correctly point out the horrific, crushing cost of that win. Basically, the entire crew was wiped out in a single night. Rebecca is brutally crushed, David is executed. So yes, Lucy is free, but she's utterly alone. As one user put it, she's essentially trapped on the moon in an endless depression.
Moving into part two, late capitalism in Night City, the true antagonist. Now, if we look at the academic analysis of the cyberpunk genre, a massive theme is the concept of late capitalism. Researchers frequently cite theorist Mark Fisher's idea of business ontology. What does that mean? It's basically a societal reality where absolutely everything, every single institution, is fundamentally run as a profit-making venture. In Night City, we see this literally everywhere. Emergency services like Trauma Team, they will let you bleed out on the sidewalk if your insurance plan isn't up to date. Even Arasaka Academy, which is supposedly a place of education, exists purely to farm corporate profit, test military-grade implants, and reinforce this extreme divide in wealth.
And academics have a really fascinating term for the coping mechanism this environment creates: depressive hedonia. It's the inability to pursue anything other than short-term pleasure, simply because imagining a better future is impossible. We see this manifested perfectly in Night City's addiction to brain dances, or VR. Citizens actively choose the sweet, numb necrosis of virtual reality, cheap drugs, and extreme cyber modification over actual political rebellion. They're escaping a wretched life that they feel completely powerless to change. Sound familiar at all? It's basically the dystopian extreme of our own modern doomscroller.
This actually ties perfectly into a pretty terrifying philosophical concept from Gilles Deleuze. He argued that society transitioned from disciplinary societies, where you're controlled by physical walls like prisons or barracks, to control societies. In a control society, you aren't locked in a physical cell. Instead, you're controlled through digital tracking, inescapable corporate debt, and the powerful illusion of free choice. Think about it. David and his crew aren't forced by some dictator to become mercenaries. They willingly subjugate themselves to incredibly dangerous cybernetics and corporate warfare, all under the illusion that they are exercising their own freedom and fighting the system. The system controls them by letting them think they're rebelling.
All right, section 3, the tragic hero's flaw. David Martinez's hamartia.
So, the crucial point here is that David suffers from classic hamartia. This is a concept as old as storytelling itself. It's the fatal flaw that completely derails a hero. When we analyze David's character, we actually see that his tragedy mirrors classic plays like Hamlet or King Lear. David's hamartia is his extreme short-sightedness, his naive ambition, and a tragic, almost arrogant overestimation of his own physical and mental limits.
The thing about David is, he's incredibly impressionable. First, he internalizes his mother's dream of reaching the top floor of Arasaka Tower. After she dies, he just absorbs the mercenary main's dream of surviving the criminal underworld. As Lucy so heartbreakingly tells him, he spends his entire life chasing after dreams that were never his. He completely squanders his own natural gifts, burying his true potential underneath a literal heap of cold cybernetics and self-denial.
You can actually map out David's tragic descent step by step. It starts with him using discounted tech out of pure poverty. But then, driven by pride and a need to prove himself, he installs that military-grade Sandevistan implant. He ignores all the warnings from his doctor, all of them. Why? Because his mother's final words convinced him he was special. He foolishly believes his high tolerance makes him somehow immune to cyberpsychosis, the total mental breakdown caused by these implants. And this fatal arrogance hits its absolute peak when he straps himself into the Arasaka cyberskeleton, sealing his terminal downfall for good. Which brings us to Section 4, Smasher and the Final Stand, the ultimate climax.
Just look at the stark, crazy contrast between our protagonist and the ultimate corporate enforcer, Adam Smasher. David is fighting a losing battle to keep his humanity. He literally requires constant kisses and grounding from Lucy just to snap out of his cyber-induced insanity. But Adam Smasher? Smasher is 96% synthetic. He never succumbs to cyberpsychosis because he never had a soul or any lingering humanity to lose in the first place. He is the perfect, empty corporate machine.
If we view this climax through the lens of TV tropes, you see just how brilliantly the show pulls the rug out from under us. Up until now, David felt invincible, which gave us this false sense of anime plot armor. But Smasher represents the trope, always someone better. What ensues is not some glorious, evenly matched anime duel. Actually, scratch that, it's a brutal curb stomp battle. Smasher is the ultimate hero killer, easily dodging David's attacks and literally tearing apart the cyber skeleton. David's big trump card means absolutely nothing against the true power of the corporation.
And wow, we absolutely cannot ignore the fate of Faraday here. This is the manipulative fixer who caused all of this destruction just trying to climb the corporate ladder. When Faraday is falling and begs Smasher for help, Smasher simply asks, "Who the frickin' are you?" Faraday falls to a completely unnoticed death. It's the ultimate proof that the corporate machine discards everyone. No matter how much you scheme or hustle, to the system, you are entirely irrelevant.
Finally, Section 5, a Pyrrhic Lunar Epilogue, the resolution on the moon.
So, Lucy makes it out. She physically escapes the corporate machine. But guys, this is the textbook definition of a Pyrrhic victory. The toll it took to get there completely destroys the value of the win itself. Tropes classify her character here as a lost Lenore, the tragic figure who is left behind just to mourn. She's on the moon, bathed in sunlight, but she is completely broken grieving a visual hallucination of David. Her primary drive was to keep David safe, and he died to get her there. It is literally her worst nightmare incarnate. Because as fans have so passionately pointed out, Night City itself is the monster. It's a casino, and the house always wins. The only way to truly win against such a rigged, capitalistic system is to just stand up and walk away. Lucy and Falco did exactly that, but the price they paid to learn that lesson was deeply, deeply bitter. We're going to wrap up this explainer with a really provocative quote from Winston Churchill that was highlighted in our source material. David was presented with countless off-ramps, but his pride, his environment, and his flaws left him woefully unprepared to survive his finest hour. And honestly, it forces us to look in the mirror. If you were tested by the high-stakes, rigged systems of our world, would your preparation and self-awareness carry you through? Or, like David Martinez, would you succumb to your flaws and give in to the moment? Ponder that for a bit, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.